Okay. This is like the 30th time of me recording it because my cameras keep screwing up. So yeah, if you think I woke up and chose violence today for this episode, no.
Violence chose me.
You're dead. No. You are.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of The Gloving Paradigm, where I'm your host Peter, aka LPD, the Buke, the cringiest glover on YouTube.
That was so terrible, I think you gave me cancer!
As you can probably tell, I'm already tired from trying to record this episode so many times. So what is it this week that I want to cover? Well, if you guys have been sleeping under a rock lately, which will not surprise me considering how the world has been lately, we've had online competitions come and go. And there's one that just recently completed about 2 weeks ago at the time of this recording. I'm going to do another thoughts and impressions video about that competition. And which competition am I talking about? GFC, or Gloving for Charity, which was an online competition that was hosted by YouGotMoves.com. Also by Ice Cream Teddy himself, who is the owner of YouGotMoves.com. Is that really necessary for me to say that? Anyways, so yeah. I had a lot of people tell me a lot of things about this particular competition, and I had a lot of people even ask me, hey, are you going to do a thoughts and impressions video about this competition? I'm like, well, I've been kind of thinking about it, I don't really know. And they're like, no, please do, yes, we want you to do your thoughts and impressions on it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll do a GFC episode like that. And one of the things that I was also concerned about before I even started tabulating my thoughts and impressions on it was I felt like I might be too harsh, or I don't know how I should approach it because it was just something of concern. To my surprise, a lot of people told me that I should be harsh because how else do we get better if we don't be harsh on each other enough to push ourselves to be better? And everybody should know how I am as a content creator. I don't like just saying things, well, this is bad and this is bad and this is bad, without giving any constructive criticism to try to give you some ideas of how to improve upon it. Do people need to take my sayings with, full-hearted gospelness? No, they can take it with a grain of salt, or they can just tell me to f*** off. I don't really care. Wouldn't it be the first time somebody told me to screw off? Yeah. So, first thing I want to do is I kind of just want to break down this online competition for you, how it was structured, how the prize pool was set up, and how it was broadcasted and things like that. And then I'm going to talk about the reception, which is my personal thoughts of it, along with the community's thoughts of it. I did speak with a good amount of people in various platforms about how they felt about GFC, and the best way I can probably say is that
this shit's gonna have nuts in it.
Yeah, pretty much Deadpool puts it elegantly. But, you know what, it's fine. It's okay though, because funny thing is that Teddy has even asked for feedback. Well, guess what, Teddy? I watched all 40 episodes of GFC, so you only need to watch one of mine. See how that works? So, GFC, or Gloving for Charity, is an online competition that had 48 contestants enter in that were broken up into 4 groups. Each group had 2 judges judging one half of the scorecard that GFC made their own scorecard for, which one side was traits, the other side was concepts, for a grand total of 40 points from each side. The top 3 of each group would move on to the playoffs, which playoffs are set up as a 1v1 match with 6 additional contenders added into the mix to move on to the semifinals. From the semifinals, we had 3 triple threat matches, which if you don't know what a triple threat match is, it's a 1v1v1 or a 3-way tie match deal, which another triple threat match for the finals. Huh? Now, each playoff section also had their own guest judges on there as well, which was very interesting. Also had some guest speakers as well. And of course, when we got to the semifinals and the finals, we actually had a full panel of judges, which means there were 2 judges for each one side of the scorecard. So instead of being 40 points, it went up to 80. And of course, if I remember correctly, the semifinals, you were able to give 1.5 point from the special guest judge or guest speaker on that. And then it was 2.5 points, not only from the special guest, but from the guest host, Animated J. And I think that was 2.5 points each, so a total of 5 additional points. The prize pool was relatively simple to understand. It was a minimum of 500, which should start out, but as merchandise on You Got Moves was sold, proceeds from that went into the prize pool. 50% of the prize pool was going to be donated to a charity of the winner's choice, with 25% of that going to the first place winner, 10% to second place, 5% to third place, and 10% split between all the semifinalists. So, where this was broadcasted was on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, even though I only really saw it on YouTube, but that's pretty much where I was going to watch it anyways, because I live on YouTube basically. Not only as a content creator, but as somebody who just consumes a crap load of content off of YouTube.
Oh, good for you!
So, what is there to say about this competition in terms of its structure? Well, it's a very ambitious one, I will certainly say. In my opinion, this was probably one of the most ambitious online competitions to date. Why is it the most ambitious? Because You Got Moves was hosting it, and they were also broadcasting it, so they had this whole thing planned out, you know. And it was a very ambitious plan. I have to commend Teddy for that. You know, kudos to you, my guy. It was a very big thing, and you managed to pull it all the way out. So, okay, so how was this received? What was the reception on GFC? Well, let's just start with mine and where I kind of sit on it, and then I'll actually talk about the community's point. So, when it came to my reception of it, the good points I have for it is that the episode formatting was actually really good and digestible, and it was actually really short. A lot of people also agree with me on that one as well, because it allowed them to kind of pick and choose which ones they wanted to watch at any given point, and plus they also could just wait until there was enough of it to binge it all the way through. Like, I remember people waiting for all of round 1 to come out before they binged all of it, because I guess Netflix and other streaming services really put up the habit of binge watching, I guess. Whatever. I also like how there was a good amount of exposure for all the contestants in the open 2 rounds, which, yes, the first 2 rounds, all the contestants who were entering were able to showcase. So they got about 3 minutes of fame to really showcase themselves as a Glover. Some people said that was too short. Some people, didn't really hear that many people say it was too long, but I'm sure there's some people who will be like, that's way too long. And I would be like, well, what do you want to do? Just a single 60-second video? That's not enough time for people to actually really showcase what they're able to do without having a tech vomit video, you know. The other thing I will say is that with the episode formatting that GFC went through, gives you a lot of gloving content to consume in and of itself, you know. Granted, I would even say that you can, watch my coverage of the, Mr. Freckles IGL comp. You know, it probably has the same amount of time, even though there's no round table episodes in those per se. But at least now you can see other formats of how episodes are made, so you guys can kind of figure that out. I personally think that GFC did a really good job on that.
Well, thank you.
The other thing I also want to point out that I really, really liked were the guests. I really liked that Animated J came back, not necessarily back to the gloving community, but he came back into the spotlight for the gloving community, because to a lot of people who are surprised by this, Animated J has done a good amount of help with the gloving community as it is. You know, he's also a coach, if I remember correctly, on YouGotMoves.com, so, you know, you have that, but he does offer a good amount of good insight when it comes to gloving in itself, even though he's not necessarily a glover himself. The other thing I want to say about the other guests is I like the guests that were not part of the gloving community and actually be coming from outside part of the gloving community. I certainly hope that these guest judges actually guest speakers told their audience that they were going to be on this, so that way they would bring that cross exposure from their own platform to GSC, to gloving itself. Did they do that? I don't know, and I'm not going to spend the time to go find out, because honestly that feels a little creepy to me to do. Like, honestly, that feels a little stalkery to me, and I just, no. If somebody else wants to do the work for me, be my guest. I am not stopping you. Okay, but yeah, there was a lot of good things that came out of that. I will also say that the judges did a really good job, in my opinion, of breaking down what they thought about it. Some judges didn't really offer a good amount of insight because they didn't really elaborate what they were talking about, and some of them really tried to elaborate what they were talking about and didn't feel like they had enough time to finish their through line of their thoughts for it. So that is something to be desired, I guess. So what were some of the shortcomings of GFC, or some people like to say just the bad parts of it? And it's not necessarily bad, it's just these could be heavily improved on. So one point I want to point out is the piece of advice that was given out in the early part of GFC. And that was know your judges and know who your judges are going to be.
Important lessons to know your judges, especially when
Yes.
you're about to do something, you know. So
Yes.
lesson of the day for anyone in the future coming into this contest, know your judges.
Okay. I talked to a good amount of contestants that were in GFC, and they felt confident with their first and second round videos for the judges that they were designated to. Then they got switched.
Wait, what?
And what I mean by that is the judges got switched up. Now granted, yes, I understand scheduling can be a very difficult time, and some people just don't have the time to do it, or something comes up that prevents them to do so. Whatever the case may be. The problem that arises with that, in my opinion, is if you're telling your contestants that they should know who their judges are and try to cater their shows to those judges, and then you switch those judges up on the last minute, you invalidated their videos, didn't you?
See, I have an eye for flails, like the flower flails. Shanksy, I feel like he might have known that I was judging and kind of catered to that a little bit, but I would say there can be a mistake made there where if you're not completely clean with it and you have someone looking at it who has an eye for it, it might not be a good idea.
It sounds like important lessons to know your judges.
The whole thing about their videos has just become validated because it wasn't catered to those judges. It was catered to different judges that are not their judges anymore. That's where things got really nervous. So in my shortest opinion and shortest gift of advice is very simple. Stop giving that advice. Stop saying that that's something that Glover should be doing, because to me it's not catering to the scorecard like I hear a lot, and seems to be very consistent with a lot of Glovers outside of this competition. But it just doesn't make sense to sit there and say, nope, you gotta make this show cater to somebody else, to a very specific person. And how is that going to appeal to other people who are watching it? To me, my best advice, especially if you're a contestant, cater to the scorecard and try to have the widest appeal to your audience, not your judges. To me, when it comes to the judges, a lot of them are very well informed when it comes to gloving. Except for one part. And this is the part that really got to me as somebody who was a participant of watching and consuming the content. Round 2 was, oh boy. I was watching round 2 and then I hear a comment like this.
I feel like he took what we said in round 1, listened to it, internalized it, worked with it, and came out the gates with, all right, guys, I fixed it. Here it is. What do you guys think?
We were not kind to him in round 1 at all, and he said, okay.
He listened.
Yeah.
I like that you guys say that these Glovers are listening to the critique you're giving out.
I think he just about did everything that we asked him to.
I find this comment very interesting. Why? Because I would love to know how the contestants were able to listen to the feedback of their first round and then bring it to the second round when that video was already submitted before they even got their first round feedback. Did they go back in time and re-record and resubmit before they did round 2? If they did, I really want to know where they got that time machine, because we have bigger problems that we need to talk about.
And
So yeah, oh boy. And it was one of the things that really irked me when I heard judges say that, because now they were tabulating their scores off of false data. That, like, you invalidated your judging because it was based off false pretenses that were not there. People cannot submit videos that were already submitted to change the feedback. Like, you see the issue with that. So I will say this though. Teddy did mention a few times that they already had them submitted in and then stopped. But they still kept saying that. So it was really, really, really hard to sit there and be like, oh yeah, this is really good advice when it's built off of false pretenses. You know what I mean? The other thing I will certainly say as well is inconsistency with posting and editing. Now, I understand that we were trying to catch up to the regular schedule that we had set in place. It's fine. That wasn't really explained very well. And to a lot of people, I felt like they kind of just overlooked a lot of the rounds because it's just like, I don't have time to sit there and watch all of these rounds. They just blah, 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 blah out. Like some people like myself who does this for a living. It was very interesting to see how they were just coming out in rapid succession, when the initial impression that I was getting was like, okay, they're going to do every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That's cool. It's during the week. Spaces it out enough for people to enjoy it. It gives not only the consumers time to enjoy it, but it gives enough buffer room for the creators to gather up all the footage and record all the footage for future rounds and get those underway and get those edited, so by the time they're ready to be launched, that they still stick to the consistency of the schedule. And if there's any hiccups, that you actually give yourself enough buffer time to fix those problems before it goes live. Didn't really feel like that happened here. And again, I think it was just because there were some scheduling inconsistencies that happened as well. The other part I want to talk about is the editing inconsistencies. It was later revealed to me that there was actually more than one person doing the editing. It depends on which episode. There were certain parts that it was one person doing the editing, and there were some parts that was the other person doing the editing. I will certainly say I can clearly tell who did the work and actually watched and listened and did the editing properly, in my opinion. And then somebody who just kind of blitzed through the video, not really actually following through and watching and discerning it, because there were times I felt like a judge or any of the hosts would make a comment and point something out and say it would be up on screen, and it never showed up. Now, have I had that problem happen a couple times? Yes, especially when I do the whole thumb thing for episodes. You know, sometimes I tend to forget that, and I get it happens. But, man, there was this part, there was a lot of long pauses that weren't really needed to be in there. They could have been cut out. There were some audio issues that happened in terms of the one particular person having them only come out of the left ear. And if, to some people that watched it, they said that they listened to it with surround sound, and it sounded like they were coming from the left side behind them.
Impact show, new impact show.
Oh, you mean? Actually, funny thing is I need to get my red fixed. Once I get that fixed, I could probably throw an impact show.
All right. Well, hey, maybe we should get that set up. We should reach out to people that fix iNovas and have like the services offered on You Got Moves, so that we can. Hey, Gloving's great at resources, right?
And speaking of resources, I couldn't help but notice that the Gloving on YouTube section is kind of missing out of this resource section. You know, a way to help fill that in no particular order, you can place, channels like Lucy Drop, Genghis Rat Light Show Artist, Dr. Reed's over at The Lighthouse, Jess's channel, and there's also a Gloving podcast. What's it called? He just recently got onto YouTube. He's been doing this stuff for about 3 years on a weekly basis, and he always talks about gloving all the time, and he posts about every Monday. What is that name? It's on the tip of my tongue. It's just, I don't know. Well, you'll figure it out. So, yeah, that was, oh boy, man, and it just kept happening, and it really started scaring me, because it got to a point where I had people who were watching GFC would just skip over every single part that wasn't the light show. They would only watch the light shows. Once people started talking and deliberating their points, they would just skip right over that to go to the next video. to me, that scares me because, especially if these are people who want to be in competitions, you gotta understand how judges judge. And the more often you hear them talk about their judging method and things like that, the easier it's going to be for you to kind of get that consensus that everyone's looking for. But yeah, when people say, I just can't stand hearing the judges talk, or they don't feel like they need to listen to what the judges have to say, that's something to be concerned about. You know, especially if you are a judge, that should be something you're very concerned about. That if no one wants to hear what you have to say, right, is anyone taking you seriously as a judge? Like that, you see where my concern's coming from, right?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. One of the other things I'll certainly say as well is that, yeah, I didn't really understand the whole playoff scenario where we went from groups of 4 to single one-on-one matches to triple threat matches. But I don't really think that's a huge mark against the tournament or the competition. It's just the format of the competition. Some people like it, some people don't. I kind of sit on the fence of, I can see how it works, but things were a lot smoother in terms of execution. It probably wouldn't be as bad. But a lot of people did not really like it. I can see why. And of course, there is the one other thing I don't understand why this was even brought up at all. So there was a particular round in the playoffs that happened that the judges made their judgment on it, and one person went, and a lot of the members of the community felt different. They didn't feel like the person who moved forward should have moved forward. And then Teddy comes out and says that we had our first controversy.
So I want to cite something. Last round, we had a little bit of a controversy with the Creepa Duck matchup.
Not only did he say that we had our first controversy within the comp, but he does it in the wrong episode. You know, why are we talking about a controversy in the middle of a round when we have a round table to talk about things of that nature? And even when we got a round table episode, it didn't get brought up again. So what was the point of bringing it up? And also, in my opinion, it wasn't really a controversy. It was just a simple disagreement. The judges made their judgment on it and the community disagreed. But you guys all moved on. So how is that a controversy? A good example of an actual controversy would be like Wizards of the Coast announcing at the last minute taking $1 million prize pool for the World Championship and changing it to $250,000. That's a controversy because that caused a massive uproar on Twitter and other various social media platforms. That did not happen here.
Nobody asked you, so why don't you just take a hike?
Like, seriously, I don't remember a bunch of people talking about this whole thing. Like, they just say, this is how I felt about it, and then they moved on. So, yeah. But, again, if we're going to have these kind of conversations about controversies within gloving, do not do it in the middle of a round episode, please. Because that's just a distraction from what you're working at hand. You're trying to showcase glovers here. And one of the other things that really started to get to me at the end of it all was just hearing this phrase over and over again of
subtle nuances.
Gloving essence, kind of losing that essence. It's the essence, man, you know, it's the essence.
The word of the day is nuance. The nuance.
Essence, gloving essence.
Okay, so I know what subtlety means, I know what nuances mean. But when you say, oh, yeah, this is all within this running theme of
gloving essence.
Here's the thing that I have a problem with this. If you're going to keep saying that there's things of subtle nuances, you need to point out what makes them a subtle nuance. You can't just say, well, it's just a subtle nuance. You need to point it out to viewers so they can be on the same page as you, especially if you are a judge. Okay? I hope to God that they didn't just tell any of the contestants, well, if you can't see it, then you just can't see it. Because if that actually happened at all, then that's even more concerning for me from the judge, because then how can I take their word as gospel in that sense? If you cannot explain to me what makes it subtle, what makes it a nuance, you know, and all that stuff, then are you actually being able to be a good judge? Because to me, I know a lot of judges are able to sit there and break it down for a lot of people. You know, I felt like Trump, Jess, Starlight, Recursion, or probably the 4 strongest judges to actually sit there and break it down. I do like Lus. Lus is also a really, really good judge, and she did her best as well. But she'll be number 5 in that case. But there's no real number between these 5 judges. These are my top 5 judges. There's no, you can put them however you want. Don't really care. But these are the 5 judges that I like the most out of it all. But that's one of the things that was very annoying, that it just felt like, here's this blanket term that we can just throw on so we can move on. You know, everything's in this
subtle nuances.
Nuance.
The nuance. So if there are people who are watching this and asking me, okay, well, how about you give us an explanation on a subtle nuance? Okay, I can do that. It's not that hard. If you have not watched the semifinals of the Mr. Freckles IGL comp that I did a coverage on, Cookie's semifinal round video is a great example of what I would say has subtle nuances in it. Subtle nuance number 1 was his flash pattern manipulation that he configured into his lights. Because if you look at it and you listen to the song, you notice that they're tailoring up to the hi-hat section of the song. All the sounds, the flash patterns were matching up to that. His movements, on the other hand, were not matching up to the same sound that his lights were matching up. It was actually on the different texture of the song, which was the bass line. Now, I even mentioned this in that video as well, okay? That his movements followed the bass line of the song, while his lights were configured to follow another texture of the song. That's subtle nuances right there. That is the subtle details that you need to be explaining to people so they can see it as well. If you just tell them, well, if you can't see it, you can't see it, that's not what that means to me. That to me means you don't know how to explain it.
How do you know what's good for me? That's my opinion!
So, you gotta really be careful of how you word things going forward. You know, even I have to be careful about how I word things going forward, because a lot of the times I have to kind of make revisions to people when I have a conversation about certain episodes on certain concepts, because I wasn't very clear about it. And that's totally fine. I like that, because then I'm finally being able to figure out what I need to do to be more clear to my audience. And of course, one other thing that really just up my skirt was the whole gloving essence thing. Like, is it the it factor? Is it the X factor? What is the gloving essence? What is essence of gloving?
I think it would be cool if someone created a class called Essence of Light Shows, so that you can keep that cultural, you know, keep the essence of where it comes from, and I don't know.
So basically what you want is a class that talks about the basic principles of gloving, that unifies all these different models and concepts together in light configurations that divide itself into different categories or models of gloving that we know as styles. Yeah, I wish somebody else was doing that too.
I made this for you!
Again, if you can't point it out and show the details that make it that way, what's the point of saying it, you know? Okay, so there are 3 major takeaways that I want to talk about when it comes to GFC in particular. 1, Lus is probably at her strongest as a host rather than a judge. She is a very strong judge, and I'm not taking that away from her, and I would still have her as a judge if I needed a judge. I just felt in terms of comp coverage, she was way stronger and way more engaged with the whole thing as a host. The main thing that I will definitely point out is that she was able to keep the flow of the show going. Like, seriously, the best way I can put it, it was like watching Nick Cannon on The Masked Singer. She just kept it going. Like, here's a judge, all right, cool, that's great. Here's the next judge, all right, cool, that's great. Let's move on to the next video. Like, she just kept it going. So, Lust, if you're watching this video, host more comps, okay? Be a host more often. I like you as a host. You're really great on camera for a host. So, do that.
Oh, thanks, man.
The other thing is, as well, is that this is probably more towards the community at large rather than the content creators and the hosts and the people who are making the competition. Is that if you're watching this stuff, please start interacting more with it. like the videos, share the videos. Especially if you're a contestant, you should be sharing that stuff so other people can see it, especially with friends and family. Crying out loud. How else are you going to get the exposure that you are asking for if you don't also put in the work to help get the exposure out there? You know what I mean? And the other point I want to point out is that I feel like we should probably have everybody on the same page when it comes to the scores and the judging and the contestants and all that stuff. The contestants, judges, and all that stuff all need to be on the same page, because then we're having these dissonances that are happening, this cognitive dissonance between the judges and the contestants, and that's why we have to keep coming back for more feedback. And I can see where that can get very, very tiring for a lot of people. But this is a necessary evil that you have to do if you're going to make content like this. I should know. I get people who talk to me about my content all the time. So you heard what I have to say. Now, what the community had to say, which is something that was very, very concerning to me on certain points, but we'll get there. The structure of the comp to a lot of people, the overall themes that I was seeing is that people didn't feel like there was a lot of consensus on the judges, especially when it came to like last minute changes. I even remember when people were talking about the last minute change on the grand finals where Krusty just randomly shows up. Now, I get it. I understand why there are these people that are on here, because of certain numbers and audiences that these certain people hold. And I'm not saying that Krusty was a bad judge. Honestly, he was the biggest surprise out of the judges group out of them all. Because why? He took notes. Like, he even sat there and was like, I'm looking at my notes. At this time, between this time and this time, he did this. At this time and this time, he did this. And at this time and this time, he did this. Yes! That's it! That is exactly... Especially if I was a contestant, that's what I want to see from my judges, that they take these notes, so that way they are able to keep their thoughts in order when they only watch it once, So, Krusty was a huge surprise as well, and I can see where a lot of people didn't like that last minute change, and I get it, because it's the grand finals. Like, you want to make sure that you stay consistent to the grand finals, and the grand finals having that last minute change was kind of an upset for a lot of people. However, in my opinion, Krusty's involvement in the grand finals was actually a blessing in disguise rather than a detriment to the entire comp, because he shows you what a judge should be doing, and that is taking notes and pinpointing what they want to talk about. Did they have to dissect every single second of the video? No. But there were highlights that he wrote down, and that made me happy. The other thing I know a lot of people were pointing out that I thought was strange, and this is something even I think is strange, that in the round table where Krusty talks about how he sees a move that Megasloths do in the semifinals, and he said, I've seen him do this so many times and I wish he would do something else. This is another point of concern for me. Are Glovers not allowed to have signature moves? Like, I know people have signature moves. I have a signature move. This is my signature move. I will do this any chance that I can when the song feels right to do it. Okay, this is my thing. Like, that's my signature move. So it's weird to hear a judge say that and have that as a weight on things that they do outside of a competition. That's why I think J-Funk was really on the nose there when he says that shouldn't matter. And he's actually happy to see people have those signature moves within their show, because it is a trademark, a brand that people would recognize the Glovers for that skill. That's a thing. So a good amount of people actually pointed that out as well. It's like, why would he say that? Well, I understand people want to see something new from a Glover and stuff like that, but that's another point right there as well. Krusty shows up at the last round of the entire comp and says that. That's odd. You know what I mean? So that's something I kind of want to point out, especially because that's a lot of members of the community pointed that out to me. And especially since that was something I also took note of, but that was pointed out to me. The other thing that kept happening, that there were the narratives that kept coming up, and it was very weird to hear these narratives come up. Why? Is because they were saying that this is what people were trying to do, and I was not getting that. So the first narrative recurring theme that kept coming up that I didn't think was actually happening until I heard it from the horse's mouth was the WWE narrative. Okay, so what is this narrative that I'm going to be displaying? So basically, If you know WWE, that's the vibe that they were trying to go for this competition. Here's the thing. I know wrestling. I know WWE. And believe me, I know WWE, okay? I was there when Triple H got married to Stephanie McMahon. I remember when they got divorced. I remember when Rey Mysterio and Kurt Angle had their whole spat. I remember when Undertaker and Randy Orton had their whole spat. I remember when Hulk Hogan and Big Show had their whole spat. And I remember when Hulk Hogan came back and got fired when they had video surveillance recording of him, which even though that was technically illegal, you know, I know this stuff, okay? I remember Chris Benoit and when he committed suicide, and I remember Eddie Guerrero and when he committed suicide. Trust me, I know wrestling. I grew up with wrestling. And believe me, this was not that vibe whatsoever. If there was any shred of a vibe that I was getting from WWE, it was Teddy trying to feel and act like Vince McMahon, which, in all honesty, Teddy, is that really who you want to be in the gloving community? Like, he's not that well liked in the wrestling world. So why do you want to be that? That doesn't make any sense to me. The other thing is that I don't feel like this competition was formatted in a way to give the narratives that WWE is able to do with their star. However, we have something that does offer that to us. And it's called pit battles. Okay? What makes pit battles so much like WWE? Well, besides WWE having managers for the wrestlers, those managers, which would be glovers in this case, would book the matches. What do they do in pit battles? Hey, I call out this person for a match. They set the terms, do the match, and then the winner. And then the audience interacts. Like, come on, look at these interactions that you're seeing on these posts when it comes to pit battles, okay? If you are wanting to have the WWE narrative happening within your comp, this is how you get it done, okay? Maybe if you actually got everybody that was on pit battles that was huge contenders from the list that has just been revived by Joe, you know, I did an episode on it, go check it out. You know, that's how you can build your WrestleManias. That's how you can do all that stuff that will be, you know, known within the community as like that WWE narrative. This competition just did not give it to me. In all honesty, then like I said, the only parts that actually made it feel like there was a WWE narrative is somebody who's trying to be a manager of the whole thing. And I really think you chose a bad role model if that's the role model you're going with, you know. I mean, for crying out loud, JBL's manager made a better manager for WWE than Vince McMahon did. Vince McMahon just has his own legacy within wrestling just because he used to be a wrestler, especially when it was with Ric Flair. So aside from the WWE narrative, which I just don't want to touch that anymore, the other narrative that I was hearing from a lot of the members of the community was the popularity contest. Now, I can see where people are coming from on that, and the main reason why people are saying that it felt like more of a popularity contest is because of that 1.5 point give out and the 2.5 points give outs that happened in the semifinals and the finals. At least that's what I remember. Yeah, the thing that gave people that impression was you got the judges' scores tabulated and it showed them on the screen, and so they saw that. Then the point got given out. The person who was originally winning that round lost because of that additional 1.5. And people felt like that's how the popularity contest came into play. And I get that. I see it too. I just don't really care. If that's how they're going to run their comp, that's how they're going to run their comp, guys. Sorry. Though I will definitely say to the people who are running comps, please take note of that, because that's actually rather important to understand. Because that's something I really don't want people to feel like when it comes to competitions. I want it to actually be like good sportsmanship, conduct stuff, not who's the most popular. Because if it was just a popularity contest through and through, yeah, it makes total sense why Mega Sloth won, because he's very, very popular with a lot of people, you know, especially compared to a lot of the other people that were in that comp as well. Could it have been like other people like Merc probably if he was in it? Maybe. I don't know. I can't. It's kind of immaterial at this point, but I do definitely see that where that narrative came from. At least that's where people were pointing it out to me. I see that. Take it as you will. The other few points that people were pointing out is that they didn't really feel like there was a narrative at all. Like, they only felt like it was just the judges talking about how they felt about the comp and just the comp itself. It wasn't really a narrative at all. And a lot of people told me that it felt like it was just a hodgepodge. To the point that people just stopped watching the parts where they were talking and just watched the videos and moved on with their day. So that's a major, huge part that was very, very concerning to me. The other 2 points that I want to point out was there was no real huge highlight parts on the Glovers. Like, I was hoping that these round tables were going to be like, the highlights of this round was this Glover, this Glover, this Glover, and this Glover. Did not happen. Did we get that at the very, very end of the entire GFC in episode 40? No. The only thing I saw was just a massive debate about how people are supposed to be judging and, you know, how people certainly judge. And one point I want to point out on that is, Jess, I know you're trying to be as unbiased as possible, but when you say that with how you would do that, that's a subjective bias. So if you're looking for somebody who is being unbiased about the comp, Trump was unbiased. Why was Trump unbiased? Because this is a lot of things I would hear from him. Yeah, this was cool and all, but did he get his angles right? Was his arms in the right place? Was his shoulder placement right? Was his torso in the right position to give off those clean lines that he was doing with his arms and his hands? That's unbiased, because the way I see that is like how you would see it in ballroom. I don't care that you can do a pirouette with your partner. Did you do the steps right? Did you do the 1, 2, 3, 4 turn steps? If you did not, you get knocked points. Did you have your arm placements in the right place? Is your head and torso pointing and facing the right way when you're moving about the floor? If not, you lose points. They don't care about the creative flares and concepts that you're able to make. That's why I liked Trump so much as a judge, because he doesn't care what you are throwing. He cares about how well you are throwing it. And to me, that's what a judge needs to have. So just want to point that out. And that was another huge big point that a lot of people were pointing out that they did not like to hear from the judges, is that they would place it at how they would do it, and to a lot of people they see that as subjective, which it is. In all honesty, it is very subjective of how you would go about it compared to how somebody else would go about it. And judging somebody based on how you would go about it is a form of bias. I'm sorry, Jess. That's how it is. You can shoot me in the foot for it. I don't care.
Shoot him! Shoot the baby teeth right out his mouth.
But yeah, no clear consensus on, or not clear consensus, but yeah, no clear narrative or highlights on the Glovers themselves. Like, I really didn't get that from the round tables. Like, yeah, I really liked the subjects and the topics that were of the round tables, but we didn't get this highlight reel from the judges, like which shows that they like the most in terms of, you know, which one that they vote for. Like, I personally just thought this one, outside of the scorecard, I liked this one the most because of what they did. Cool. Didn't get that. Did not get a whole recap deal at the end of GFC either, which is also very, very strange, because if you recall, IGC had recap videos, Boss had recap videos. Just point that out. And the other thing is, well, I thought this was so crazy, because everybody knows what GFC means. Gloving for charity, gloving for charity. People forgot that this was a competition for charity, and that was really, really odd to hear. You know, did I forget? No, because it makes sense to me. I take down notes for a reason, people. But the idea that the judges or the hosts didn't sit there and really focus on the Glovers themselves to the comp, and just focus on just how the comp was on its own. Did you really construct the narrative that you wanted for these Glovers? Because again, if we're talking about the WWE narrative, the narratives are on the performers, not the competition itself. You know, people don't get hyped for WrestleMania because it's WrestleMania. People get hyped for WrestleMania because of their favorite wrestlers going to WrestleMania. Like, that's the thing. You see where I'm coming from? That's something that I want to point out, is that we didn't get that clear narrative of the Glovers themselves or the charities that they were trying to rep. And in all honesty, the only time that the charity thing actually came right back up was in the finals, when people were actually just telling them which charities that they were going to donate to. Which, If you don't know yet, Mega Sloth did win, and half the proceeds went to St. Jude, which is a great organization because it's for kids suffering from cancer. And you can't say no to that, can you? Unless you're some heartless person. You know. At the end of the day, what is it that I can tell anybody who wants to make a competition like this? This isn't just for Teddy. This is for anybody in the future who wants to make a competition, just like I did with Wimp Olympics, okay? If you're going to have a competition, make sure that you're focusing on your glovers. They're the reason why the competition is happening in the first place, is because they want to have that time in the spotlight. Not for fame, not for clout. For God's sakes, if people say that it's for clout, they need to just shut the hell up, okay? People work really hard on their craft. They want to show the world how hard they work on their craft. So if you think that people are just doing competitions to chase clout, you're completely wrong, okay? People find their own amusement out of something. And if a competitive outlet is what they want from gloving, then that's what they want from gloving. It's not a clout chasing thing. The other thing I want to say as well is that we shouldn't be using competitions as the host to generate the clout. It does not make sense, because at that point, is the competition for the glovers who are in it, or is it for you? You know, it's why I like what I'm doing with my comp coverage, because it's not about me. I just want to bring more coverage to these competitions because there are glovers in there. I mean, would many of these people actually be known within the community if somebody didn't cover them? You know, I don't think so. You know, would there be enough coverage for everybody to be noticed? Probably not, but that's one thing to me, is if you're going to make a competition, focus on your glovers, okay? Focus on the people who are in there and focus your conversations on them, not on how you feel about how the competition is going. You know, if you're going to talk about how you feel about how the competition is going, it better be revolving around the people who are going to the next round. The other thing I felt as well is that if you're going to construct this narrative, or construct a narrative for the glovers, their entry videos probably should have a little like short segment where they can actually explain themselves. Here's a great example. Worldwide Glovers actually have a flow bio section where you are allowed to give your name, your glover's name, affiliations, any teams, and a little bit of background about you as a flow artist. You know, I filled one out, as you can see right here. It's pretty long, but it's great. You can go check it out on Discord. Have fun with that. But that's one of the things that didn't happen. And going forward, if anyone wants to do a competition like this and they want to have the narrative on the glovers, you got to give them airtime to talk. You know, even if you just have them, you know, send you an entry video of why they're joining the competition and stuff, at least that way they get the airtime to actually talk. Give the time for the audience to invest in the glovers that are competing. You know, that's why WWE is so successful with their narratives, is because the wrestlers are given the airtime needed to construct their narratives. Who's the hero? Who's the villain? What are their motivations for battling this person? Like, that's the thing. Now, I'm not saying that when it comes to the competition that that's what they should be doing. It's like, no, that's what pit battles is for, and that's why it's great. But that's one of the things. You know, that's just how I'm going to put it. You know, last thing that I definitely want to point out is, you know, highlights help. You know, I know it's a lot more work, but, you know, we've seen them in other competition shows that they are able to show like this highlight of their journey and where they got to, especially if they're like leaving. You know, we've seen that many times. So You Think You Could Dance, Dancing with the Stars, World of Dance, blah 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 blah. We see it all the time. Fox is really good with that formula, okay? But, you know, allow that time for that to happen. You know what I mean? If you don't give that time, then it just kind of feels like it's like, oh great, okay, go. You know, it feels like an audition at that point rather than an actual showcase of performance. And lastly but not least, roundtables. As much as I loved every single roundtable, except for kind of the last one, that was kind of more of just a heated debate more than anything, and was not moderated. I like it. I like that we cover these subjects. But again, if you're going to cover these subject matters, please utilize your glovers that are in the competition to showcase what you're talking about, because that way you're bringing it back to them. It's still about the competition, but you're also involving the people who are competing to be involved in that manner by showcasing certain segments of their show that highlight what you are talking about. You done it, you done that, but you didn't do that in the round tables, which was kind of sad, in my opinion. It made me a little disappointed, but again, at the end of the day, this was all a massive learning experience, and to this day, we're going to learn to get better and better and better at it. We just need to be a little bit more vocal about how we can help each other get better at things. You know, I get comments all the time where people have told me that I do things I need to get a little bit better at, and I work on that. Do I get it overnight? No, not all the time, but it's all about that communication. You know, just like I said to my audience members, Teddy can't read your minds, I can't read your minds, and trying to say everything that we can is just very, very foolhardy. So please, for the love of God, stop saying that. But yeah, that's pretty much all for my episode. I certainly hope you guys enjoy what I had to say in this episode. I definitely like to hear what you guys think about GFC, what were your thoughts and impressions about it. Of course, you have the various outlets you can hit me up at. You have my Facebook, you have Discord, you have Instagram, you have Reddit, you have comment section down below. And also, I would definitely like to say, please like, share, and subscribe if you like the content that I'm making. And if you also want to help me out make better content, you do have the wonderful opportunity to hit me up on Ko-Fi for a one-time donation. Of course, it's going to be right there. Enjoy it. But other than that, I think I don't need to go any further. So, thank you to everybody who has shown me support so far. Thank you to everybody who's donated to me on my Ko-Fi as it is. So far, it is really appreciated. Thank you so much. I am very happy to see that. But I am your host, Peter, aka LPT Buke, and I'll see you guys all next week.